WFYI podcasts are made possible by Bloomington, Indiana, an American college town offering experiences like indulging in grub at Nick's English Hut, taking a stroll along Kirkwood Avenue, feeling the history and magic of Assembly Hall, and providing the chance to feel like a college kid again. Plan your trip at visitbloomington.com.
I'm Kyle Long, host of Cultural Manifesto, just one of the local music programs you can enjoy on WFYI. These programs would not be possible without your financial support. And to say thank you, we want to send you to see Lyle Lovett when he comes to Indianapolis on July 28th. Choose a concert ticket as your gift when you donate at WFYI.org/give. And thanks for supporting WFYI.
This is WFYI News Now. It's May 30th, and I'm Abriana Herron. On today's show, the head of the state's largest teachers union says he's deeply concerned about the growth of the private school voucher program. And as the humanitarian crisis in Gaza grows, so do calls for ceasefire. And some in the U.S. believe their local city councils have a role to play.
Because if you don't, we will vote you out. Plain and simple.
Those stories coming up. But first, an attempt to bring a Major League Soccer team to Indianapolis is one step closer to reality. A committee of the City-County Council Tuesday night forwarded a proposal that approves a new professional sports development area for an MLS team. The move brought friction as the city turned away from a plan with Indy 11 to build a soccer stadium for its minor league team. Deputy Mayor Dan Parker acknowledged that.
This has been an uncomfortable process, but it has been one that has been on a fast track to do what is best for all the residents of the city of Indianapolis.
City leaders say now is the time to bring an MLS team to Indianapolis as popularity of the sport grows in the U.S. The other site where Indy 11 Stadium broke ground last year is also the location of the city's first public cemetery. Deputy Mayor Judith Thomas says after a year of research and community conversation, there are too many questions about the human remains for the stadium project to proceed there.
That is the feedback that we've received from the community, asking questions of what are we going to do?
The 3-hour meeting included public testimony, which attracted a mix of support and opposition to the proposal. The measure now moves to the Indianapolis City-County Council. There is a June 30th deadline for the city to submit a proposed map for the sports development area. The head of the state's largest teachers union says he's deeply concerned about the growth of the private school voucher program after a 31% enrollment increase, the largest jump ever in a single year. From WFYI's Education Desk, Eric Weddle has more.
Enrollment in Indiana's private school voucher program is at an all-time high, 70,000 students. The state paid $439 million in tuition grants to private schools last year. A new state report says families earning more than $200,000 and receiving vouchers increased nearly tenfold compared to the previous year. The head of the Indiana State Teachers Association, Keith Gamble, says the voucher program is providing funds to wealthier families who can already afford private schools. He says those tax dollars should go to public schools. But school choice proponents say all families should have support to find the best school for their kids. Nearly all Indiana families are eligible for a voucher in the 2024-25 school year. I'm Eric Weddle.
And for our final story today, the second in a series of 3 features we're bringing to you this week. The Israel-Hamas war in October 7th have deep social impacts across the U.S., including here in Indiana. From protests and student sit-ins to calls for local government statements to private grief at home. It could also influence elections in November. Some of those calls have put pressure on not just national politicians, but also local leaders. In some U.S. cities like West Lafayette in Indiana, city officials are feeling the heat as calls for a Gaza ceasefire resolution mount. WFYI's Ben Thorpe reports city officials are hesitant to weigh in.
West Lafayette community members have for 3 months attended city council meetings and given long hours of public comment. They demand the city addresses the growing humanitarian crisis in Gaza. Those calls came to a head during the May meeting as attendees told the council they needed to pass a ceasefire resolution. West Lafayette resident Jonathan Chaconis put it simply.
Because if you don't, we will vote you out. Plain and simple.
Ahead of public comment, city officials read a joint statement condemning anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, racism, and hate. Residents say the statement isn't enough. Purdue student Arjun Jenikin has helped lead the effort to pass a ceasefire resolution in West Lafayette. Jenikin says the Israeli onslaught on Gaza amounts to genocide.
The images coming out of the genocide are terrifying and shocking, and every person who works in any level of government should be intimately familiar with them, intimately so. And I think that, in a way that moves them to action.
During the council's meeting last week, Purdue student and Palestinian-American Jihan Shalabi was moved to tears while describing her 2 years in Palestine.
I remember walking to school one morning, and right in front of my doorsteps I see Israeli tanks and soldiers carrying guns. The news often fails to capture the true essence of life in Palestine. Born and raised in New Jersey, I now feel ashamed that my country supports the oppression of my people, sends weapons to kill my people, and fund this genocide.
Shalabi was joined by nearly 100 community members, including Jewish Americans, in favor of passing a ceasefire resolution. Across the country, over 70 cities have passed resolutions on the Israel-Palestine conflict, with at least 48 calling for a ceasefire. City resolutions are not binding in any legal sense, but there is a long history of cities passing resolutions to express where a community stands on certain issues, such as the Vietnam War. But do resolutions by U.S. cities even matter? It depends on who you ask.
I truly believe that we all have a role to play, no matter how small it is.
That's Detroit Council member Gabriela Santiago Romero. Her city passed a resolution in November calling for a ceasefire. She says the resolutions are a warning.
If Democrats don't listen, I do believe that they will see themselves out of power soon enough.
Resolutions are part of a growing number of symbolic actions being taken to send a message to national leadership. In Michigan, 13% of Democratic primary voters voted uncommitted. They say it's a message to President Biden for not calling for a permanent ceasefire in Gaza. But in West Lafayette, city officials see it differently. They say the city should not concern itself with international issues. Mayor Aaron Easter says no statement could ultimately encompass the complexity of the conflict.
We want everybody to feel at home and welcome here. That includes everyone, right? Not just one specific group of people or another specific group of people, but making sure that everyone feels like they're welcome here and have a place here and that they can feel safe here.
Some people, like Councilor David Sanders, say he's concerned about civilian casualties, but he says that is what happens in war. He says he's frustrated that months of public comment often made no mention of Hamas's role in the conflict.
Listen, we all sat here and listened month after month without interrupting, despite the fact that you were not being respectful towards us.
Sanders moved to have a photo of Hamas militants carrying the body of an Israeli woman projected on a screen above city councilors.
Could you turn on the slide, please?
That ultimately led to shouts of shame and the council president calling for an end to the meeting.
I'm calling a 5-minute recess.
Many residents told the council they would come back until a resolution is adopted. I'm Ben Thorpe, WFYI News.
For more on this story, you can go to our website at wfyi.org/news. And that's all for today's episode of WFYI News Now. Our podcast is produced by the following people who live in your community: Drew Daudelin, Kendall Antron, who composed the music for this podcast, and me, Abriana Herron. Our news director is Sarah Neal-Estes. If you like today's episode, remember to subscribe and share. And follow WFYI on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube to check in on our newsroom throughout the day. Thanks for listening. We'll be back tomorrow.
WFYI podcasts are made possible by Bloomington, Indiana, an American college town offering experiences like indulging in grub at Nick's English Hut, taking a stroll along Kirkwood Avenue, feeling the history and magic of Assembly Hall and providing the chance to feel like a college kid again. Plan your trip at visitbloomington.com.